Hello, good evening and welcome to News at 10. We're live from the News Hub at Desawe Kanda in Accra. You can also hear us on 3FM 92.7 and around the world. You can follow our live stream on our Facebook page. Let me take you through the day's news highlights. The Environmental Protection Agency has described as illegal the attempts by Exton Cubic Group Limited to enter the Ninyahene bauxite deposits area for the purposes of prospecting and undertaking mining activities. A statement signed by the Executive Director of EPA says the company was only issued a prospective license which expired in 2016. And the power crisis from 2012 to 2015 has been partly blamed for the fold-up of the UT and Capital banks and some 5,000 job losses within the small and medium-scale enterprises. The findings of the research conducted by the Institute of Statistical and Social Research, ISE, suggest government invest heavily in power generation to ensure reliable electricity supply. Our latest findings by the 12 labor unions have faulted SSNIT for reducing the pension benefits of contributors by more than 50% as administrative charges in the past 20 years. The group has therefore threatened legal action if SSNIT fails to reimburse affected pensioners. A Member of Parliament for Asin South, Reverend John Intim Fojo, has cautioned government not to succumb to international pressure to legalize homosexuality in the country. A group of 8 Ghanaians from Canada are currently going round the country seeking signatures for a petition which seeks to impress on the Ghanaian government to legalize homosexuality. Those were our major news highlights. Remember, we're streaming live on our Facebook page, and you can also hear us on 3FM 92.7. Up next is The Big One. Why, before The Big One, President Akufo-Addo has returned home after a 3-day state visit to Equatorial Guinea. The visit culminated in the signing of a 200 million cubic liquefied natural gas agreement. Minister of Energy Boachi Ejako spoke to the media and said the agreement would address the energy challenges facing Ghana.
My utility in the energy ministry is to unravel and solve the money issues that bedeviled the sector. We are on course in terms of the energy sector bond, which will reset all qualified liabilities to zero and give the operators in the energy sector a solid balance sheet to begin to operate from and make them credible counterparties and off-takers. We are putting in the cash waterfall mechanism, which will make sure that the liquidity within the energy sector, the value chain, is enhanced, so that we don't keep on piling and accumulating debts. Once we do the debt restructuring and the cash waterfall mechanism, all parties in the sector will now have sufficient liquidities and flows to make sure that they pay for what they buy. There will be a substantive agreement that should come within a matter of a month or two. But that is based on concluding the technical negotiations. And we expect that next week we'll begin to tie those loose ends to make the final signing possible.
This is some analysis on this. Gilbert Richmond Kilsing is a principal researcher at the Institute of Energy Security and is joining us on the telephone lines now. Good evening, sir, and thank you very much for your time. So tell me how critical the signing of this LNG, liquefied natural gas deal with Equatorial Guinea is. We're told that they were getting 150 to 200 million cubic liquefied natural gas.
Good evening to you and good evening to your viewers. We know that from 2012, when we had the challenges in the energy sector. At the time, one of the challenges that we had was our generation capacity. At a point in time, the previous administration dealt with the generation capacity, and we had issues with fuel as well. We know that we had a deal with Nigeria where it takes 120 million cubic feet of LNG. At a point we were getting just 30 million cubic feet, which was woefully inadequate. As we speak, we have a number of thermal plants that run on gas. We have the thermal plant as well. We have the Takari thermal plant. We have a Mary that runs on it. We have a Soki as well. So this deal coming into fusion is good for the country. Aside Ituabo, we know that we are now developing Sankofa, which we are expecting Sankofa to be able to feed about 1,000 megawatts as well. So it's good for the country. At least some of our thermal plants will be back on stream, and it's also going to affect the cost of production, because we know that LNG is the cheapest when it comes to the fuels that we use for thermal plant.
We're yet to figure out how this volume of gas is going to get to Ghana. But before we enter into that detailed discussion, I want to find out whether you expect that this will help cut down the tariff or cost of electricity. Really, many people are hoping it will.
Definitely, it's going to affect it, because whether you are going to use light crude oil, or you are going to use this distillate fuel oil, or you're going to use HFO, or what we call heavy fuel oil, they are all relatively expensive as compared to liquefied natural gas. So definitely, once we are using that, the production or the cost of production will be cheaper than using other means, which eventually will affect the cost of production. And we are expecting that when this happens, governments will be bold enough to reduce taxes or tariffs when it comes to electricity.
Right. Mr. Roxon, we're grateful. Thank you extremely for your time. Gilbert Richmond Roxon is a principal researcher at the Institute of Energy Security. He joined us via phone there. Let's move away from that. The Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, COPEC, says Ghana risks losing more revenue if it continues to ignore the fuel smuggling menace in the country. COPEC believes strongly that the government has turned a blind eye to the fuel smuggling issue, which, if not addressed properly, will affect consumers in the long run. Reports indicate that government risks losing about 1.5 billion Ghana cedis to fuel smuggling this year. But for the smuggling of fuel, the country would have gained more than 5 billion cedis in revenue in 2017. We're also told that Ghana lost over 150 million US dollars to fuel smuggling in September and November of 2016 alone. Well, this is something that is pretty worrying. But we have in the studio tonight Duncan Amoah, who is Executive Director of COPEC, joining us for a discussion on this. Ms. Amoah, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening to you, Steve.
So what makes you think that government is unconcerned about the smuggling situation here?
Steve.
And when you say government, I reckon that you're not only referring to the NPP administration, successive governments too?
Indeed, this menace reared its ugly head somewhere 2015, and we haven't been able to contain it. It's come with us. We've dealt with this. Last year alone, we're estimated to have lost about 850 million new Ghana cedis. One was expecting that we would make some rigorous effort to curtail the menace. Unfortunately, as we speak, if you look at how much the regular, legitimate oil marketing companies are losing month on end.
But that's the whole point. We're told that both the bulk oil distribution companies and oil marketing companies are complaining. But what roles do you play in this smuggling? Is there a role at all? Why would you complain?
Steve, let me try to break it down a bit. When you talk of the smuggling, there are two sides to the smuggling. The first bit being where people bring in products through the seaports, what you call the harbor load. So these products are unaccounted for, untested, they are unregulated. And again, so these products come through unapproved.
They're not taxed.
Yeah, they are not taxed. Eventually, the state doesn't even have an account of them. So they get through, eventually find its way to our pumps, untaxed. And if anybody knows, when you buy a liter of fuel, you are paying about 51% for taxes alone. And so when the person evades the tax net, the product is one untested, and so you cannot even vouch for quality. And then it doesn't pay tax, so you cannot even say that the state is benefiting anything. And then they are selling at premium, almost the same value that the regular products would have gone through. That's how much they sell the products. Then there's a second worrying trend, what you call the export products, where a company goes to load with a Burkina number plate, a Togo number plate, any of the neighboring landlocked countries' number plate, and says this product is meant for Burkina. Eventually, the product doesn't get to Burkina. It gets diverted back into Ghana, and it's sold. Now, what happens again is that because the Burkina government would have taxed the product if it was a transit product, the Burkina government doesn't get the product eventually, and it's sold.
Which of the two instances of smuggling you're talking about is most prevalent in Ghana today?
Steve,
as we speak
now, the export menace is pretty sad.
It's huge.
It's huge. You go to some of the depots and you find these foreign number plates. They load, move away from the depot, the bonded area, and then as soon as they either transfer product into another bulk, or number plates are changed eventually somewhere along the way, and then products.
That boils down to criminality. And what can be done to stop this? I reckon that the COPEC must be doing some form of work to, one, find the culprits, and two, possibly assist the security agencies to arrest these people.
What is sad is that the culprits are known. What is sad?
They're known?
Yes. If you remember when the Bust issue came, one company who was known to be holding products, MPA came out to say it was unlicensed, unregulated, unknown.
There's just one?
Yes, there was one.
And there are more?
There are more.
And
these ones are visible, tank, yachts, dotted across Tema, the Pong area, the Gulf City area. As we speak, if anybody would want to drive through those enclaves, business is ongoing. And so we end up believing, if indeed the state would want to take action, you've sent military.
So you get the feeling there are some forms of connivance on the part of relevant authorities, or what? Steve, you don't exactly know?
Steve, it will be difficult not to think that some higher authorities would want to, shield some of these illegal activities. Other than that, you do not see how some of these operations are not happening in Hamile. They are not happening in Sampa, but within the capital. And so you can even go walk physically to these tank yards.
So quickly, let's wrap up on this. And what do you want to see done?
Steve, if a country as small as ours, with an economy as small as ours, can afford to lose over $1 billion in 1 year, revenue that could have come to the state, we are still consuming the products anyway. If the country is losing this much, not only the state losing, but for me as a consumer, what is even more disturbing to me is that these products are untested because they don't go through the approved routes. And for whatever it is worth, they find themselves back into our pumps. For the OMCs, again, they are losing money. They go to invest in infrastructure, invest in everything. Unfortunately, others are using the back door to make way much more than they do. And so today, some other OMCs who are not able to withstand the heat and pressures are having to join them.
Right.
And money is going to a mafia or a cartel.
Very scary scenario you're painting for us there. But we're grateful. Duncan Amoah is Executive Director of COPEC, Petroleum Consumers. My name is Stephen Enti. This is News at 10. You can also hear us, actually, on 3FM 92.7. We'll be right back with more news. Please stay. Yes. Welcome back. Now, the Member of Parliament for Asin South, Reverend John Intim Fojo, has cautioned government not to succumb to international pressure to legalize homosexuality in the country. A group of 8 Ghanaians from Canada are currently going round the country seeking signatures for a petition which seeks to impress on the Ghanaian government to legalize homosexuality. Tonight I'm fortunate to have with me Reverend John Intim Fojo, who is the MP for Asin South constituency in the Central Region and is on the Committees of Foreign Affairs and member of Holding Offices of Profit Committee of Parliament, among others. Good evening, Honorable. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Stephen.
For joining us. So, Ghana has shown distaste for homosexuality anyway. I mean, we don't have a friendly legal regime for that. So, why the press conference?
Thank you very much, Steve, for the opportunity, and a good evening to our cherished viewers, particularly those doing the viewing from Asin South constituency. You agree with me perfectly that right from the beginning of creation, God in his own wisdom, after creating trees and all kinds of creation and even animals, created Adam. When he thought that was need for Adam to have company, he didn't ask Adam to sort himself out with any of the animals. Neither did he create another man, another Adam. He created woman. And then he set the agenda, mandated them to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. So today, if we have found certain jurisdictions under the pretext of human rights veering off, and deciding as a people to them in those jurisdictions that they find acceptable the practices of homosexuality, lesbianism, and bestiality, we as a people are also governed by our constitution. Article 35, which is the directive state policy, principle for state policy, actually gives us the framework that, sovereignty lies with the people, and these are the people that power emanates from, and also goes to make provision for the protection of human rights and protection of human dignity. But in Article 39, however, it is stated clearly the cultural objectives of Ghana. And therein is stated that, the state shall take steps to integrate cultural practices into the fabric of national life, such cultures and norms and values that are considered appropriate. So here, it is the people and society that will make the determination, the practices and the values that we consider as appropriate. All throughout the country, within the 4 walls of the country, from the north to south, east and west, there is not any particular group of people who would gather as a family, and then a woman who probably is a kinsman will show up with another woman and then introduce into the family to contract such a marriage for them. It doesn't happen anywhere. There is no culture that accepts a man bringing a fellow man for the family to bless such a marriage. Neither is it heard anywhere or countenance anywhere that a man will bring, an animal to contract a marriage. And fundamentally, the Criminal Code of Ghana also proscribes the practices of homosexuality, lesbianism, and bestiality. But you'd acknowledge that over the years, there's been insistent push and pressure on the government of Ghana to decriminalize homosexuality, lesbianism, and bestiality.
So, of course, you do not want this to be done. You don't want government to...
And what I'm calling for is that as members of parliament, as legislature, and even as a people, we must stand firm on what we have enshrined in our laws, what we believe acceptable as our culture and our values, even bringing in, religious principles. And I'm confident to bring in religious principles because the president of Ghana, the vice president, they swear either by the Bible or the Quran. I, as a member of parliament, swore to defend the constitution, but I first swore with the Bible.
But you are arguing on religious grounds.
No, I'm
but there are those who feel that the issues of homosexuality borders on sex, and this is private matters. I mean, I don't see any problem with a man having, I don't see why a man who has sex with a woman would have to make this a public matter. So why make homosexuality a public matter and perhaps use that as a basis to
It is a public matter because fundamentally our laws divide, and I've stated all the provisions from the Constitution, the articles that support it, and the criminal code that debars, people having uncanny natural knowledge with animals or with certain people as the law has so described. So my argument principally is based on our Constitution, on our laws, and then it is important that we also bring in, even though Ghana is considered as constitutionally as a secular country, we all agree that we tout ourselves as a very religious country. And I gave an example that we first swear with the Bible or Quran, even before defending the Constitution of Ghana.
Various religions coexist
very
peacefully.
sound, and all the religions and the doctrines so enshrined, or there is no religion in Ghana that I have come across whose doctrines actually accept homosexuality. So we must accept, and again, these views are views that I am personally espousing without prejudice to the position of the Parliament of Ghana, without prejudice to the position of the government of Ghana, the Parliament of Ghana, any political party whatsoever, or any religious group. And I must say here, I love all people. I'm a reverend minister. Jesus came for everyone. I love all manner of people. You love
homosexuals
and my
also.
Position...
Are there homosexuals in your church?
My position, no. My position is clear. And it is without prejudice nor discrimination on any group of people, on any grounds whatsoever, on sexual orientation or decisions. But here, if we are saying that, these are human rights issues, and that a group of people or two people who are full-grown age can decide what they do, and it's a matter of choice, and then room must be given to tolerate. Yeah, we are tolerant, but we are saying here that two people will agree, that is within our human right to make a choice to say walk naked on the streets does not make it acceptable by society.
Right,
so yes, much as we tolerate the views of everyone and accept that people must exercise their human rights, it must be within the context of what as a society, within our laws, our norms and values and cultures, we accept as appropriate.
Right, Reverend, we're grateful for your time. Reverend John and Tim Forjo is MP for Asin South constituency in the Central Region. Thanks for coming. Now, youth groups at Nyinahini in the Achimamponua district of the Ashanti region Wednesday protested against bauxite prospecting activities in the Tano Ofin Forest Reserve being carried out by Extin Cubic Group Limited. At a protest march to petition the government, the groups demanded the company removes all mining equipment from the area.
Petition to the president, the youth of Nyinahini demanded all machines of Extin Cubic Group be impounded until an amicable agreement is reached among all stakeholders. The police had earlier attempted preventing the youth from embarking on the planned demonstration in the area. The move angered the youth, who threatened not to allow the company to operate. But the protesters were later allowed to present their petition to the local assembly. Spokesperson for the youth, Babayaro, has appealed to government to assure all excavators, bulldozers and trucks of the company are impounded until all interest groups are engaged.
We want to know the number of percentage or the percentage that the company will be giving to Achimamponua youth in terms of the skilled labor and that of the unskilled labor. 2, we would like to know those people who are living around those environments that they are going to have the operations. Some of them are taking their resources, that let's say the water resources, from the water banks that are flowing, not even the boreholes. We are yet as a district to get them boreholes. So if you are going to do all these things, you need to sit down with the district assembly in collaboration with all the stakeholders so that you make provision for those who are living in those areas to get them water, and more to the point, even if there should be a resettlement, you do all these things properly before you can go in to do all these things.
The Nyinahini District Police Commander ASP Ambrose Abwaje debunked media report there is tension in the community. He, however, cautioned the resident to be law-abiding.
I will tell them to remain calm and go on with their normal activities, and the police is there to ensure that nobody take the law into their own hands. And we will continue to enforce the needed laws law enforcement that we need to enforce as a law enforcement agency.
The Ashanti Regional Coordinating Council, as part of the clampdown on illegal mining, seized heavy-duty equipment deployed for the prospecting and mining of bauxite in the Tano Offin Forest Reserve. The Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, however, says the company has the authorization specting in the area.
That's it for News at 10. Thank you very much for making time. On behalf of the crew, good night. And for those who left your dial on 3FM 92.7, thanks for leaving it there. There's more news at 3news.com. Good night.